Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my top 10 must-have sleepers for 2024 fantasy football. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do hit that like button down below. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my top 10 must-have sleepers for 2024 fantasy football. We begin with my first must-have sleeper, and that is Jameson Williams, wide receiver of the Detroit Lions. Current aggregate ADP in PPR leagues from Fantrax, Sleeper, ESPN, MFL, and NFFC have him as pick 109. Now, last season, Jameson Williams was a bust of large magnitude, right? Jameson Williams was a complete and utter unmitigated disaster. 12 games played with 10 starts, 41 targets, 24 receptions, 354 receiving yards, and 3 total touchdowns. Sure, he had some solid showings in some of those games, but at the end of the day, Jameson Williams did not live up to the hype at all and hasn't lived up to his hype coming into the NFL draft at all. Now, it is important to note that this is really the first offseason where Jameson Williams has been able to run with the starters. And according to quarterback Jared Goff, that has been a huge reason as to why he has been successful in the early parts of the offseason process. Dan Campbell also recently said that if you said, give me one guy that has been most improved this offseason, Jameson Williams would be that guy right now. Last season, he was second in contested catch rate and 38th in target separation. I truly believe this is going to be the year where we see Jameson Williams fully develop into the clear wide receiver 2 on the Detroit Lions, where we see him get a legitimate amount of targets game in and game out, because 3.4 targets per game simply isn't going to cut it. Even though Jameson Williams is a guy that has the burners and can beat you deep, you need more than 3.4 targets per game, right? So Jameson Williams now working with the starters all offseason. I have a lot of hope that this is going to be the season where we see Jameson Williams break out. And based upon his ADP, I definitely would be attacking him in drafts around where he is going. Next up, we move to Devin Singletary, running back of the New York Football Giants, currently coming off the board at pick 106. Now, last year was kind of a resurgence of Devin Singletary's career. Devin Singletary was a guy in Buffalo that I, at points, got a little bit excited about, but he never really did anything for fantasy football. He was never really able to be consistent. Now, last year, he was buried on the depth chart behind Dameon Pierce, and as a Dameon Pierce truther, I thought there was no way Devin Singletary would take over for Dameon Pierce, but I was completely wrong. Dameon Pierce was absolute dog shit, and Devin Singletary was actually relatively solid. From what I have seen up to this point, it would appear that Devin Singletary will be the running back 1 on the Giants, and rookie Tyrone Tracy Jr. will be the running back 2. Now, this video is not meant to be a Tyrone Tracy hit piece. I just think that Devin Singletary, as the veteran, will get the first crack at things. And if Devin Singletary is able to be successful, then Devin Singletary can hold on to that running back 1 job for the rest of the season. Now, Devin Singletary isn't some prolific pass-catching running back like Christian McCaffrey, like Saquon Barkley, like Austin Eckler, but Devin Singletary is a solid enough pass-catching back to get 3 or 4 targets potentially in any given game. I get that the Giants offense on paper is 2 thumbs down, but at the end of the day, if you're able to get the running back 1 on a team at pick 106, I am just going to take advantage of that. Again, I think he's going to be able to fend off Tyrone Tracy throughout the offseason and keep his role as the running back number 1. I like the flashes that I saw out of Devin Singletary last year in Houston. So while the Giants is definitely a humongous downgrade in offense, I think if Daniel Jones is able to stay healthy, maybe Daniel Jones plays better than the absolute atrociousness that we saw on our television last season, I think Devin Singletary is a very solid pick there in New York. At number 3, we got Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback of the Miami Dolphins, coming off the board one pick later at pick 107. Tua Tagovailoa last year was quarterback 11 and quarterback 21 in points per game. Now, we all know how the season went for Tua Tagovailoa. To start off the year, this guy was on fire, NBA Jam style. This guy had the Denver Broncos defense in the figure 4. They dropped their nuts in the mouth of the Broncos, scoring 70 plus points, and that was really the high point of the season. Now, they kept playing solid after that, but once it started getting a little nippy out, once it started to get a little bit cold, the Miami Dolphins offense started to shit the bed. Now, you can give a couple of reasons for that. For one, the defense was beaten and battered. There was so many injuries to the defense. Phillips is out. No bueno. The Dolphins defense is terrible. And then we start to see the offense get injured. Tyreek Hill is hurt. The offensive line is just swapping dudes in and out like it's a fucking gangbang. And the Dolphins offense just starts to decline. Now, I am far from someone that is going to tell you that I will guarantee you that the Dolphins offense will have things figured out in December once it starts getting a little bit cold. That is to be foreseen. But given that Tua's coming off the board outside the top 12 at the quarterback position, if Tua is your backup quarterback, I would feel incredibly confident in that. And I think that he has the upside to be a stone cold lock, to be a safe top 12 quarterback game in and game out. We're talking about the NFL leading passer from last season, first in passing yards, 9th in pass attempts, 5th in passing touchdowns with a 5.2% rate. The passing touchdown rate is important because if that number is around 5%, that means that that is very normal. If Tua threw 6% touchdowns, then it's very likely that that number is going to go down, unless you're like Patrick Mahomes or something, and you can throw 6% passing touchdowns because you're just that good. 4th in interceptions, not the best, 35 carries for 74 yards and 0 touchdowns. Tua has slimmed down this season. Tyreek Hill has noted that it looks like Tua's on fucking Ozempic. He went from being thick, he went from being fatter than Lizzo, and now he is skinny, and maybe that leads to some more rushing upside. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he turns into Kyler Murray or something, but maybe he rushes the ball a little bit more. In terms of efficiency, Tua was uber efficient last season. 1st in accuracy rating, 1st in deep ball accuracy rating, 2nd in yards per attempt, 7th in true completion percentage, 2nd in deep ball completion percentage, 7th in red zone completion percentage, and 6th in true passer rating. Tua Tagovailoa has all of these premier weapons at his disposal. I think he's got a better tight end now. Going from Durham Smythe this year, it's going to be Jonnu Smith. They add a solid wide receiver 3 in Odell Beckham Jr. And I think if you add that all together, you got a recipe of sugar, spice, and everything nice. Shout out the Powerpuff Girls for Tua Tagovailoa this season to have his best year yet. He has looked better every single year in this Mike McDaniel system, and now he has his best weapons core yet. At number 4, we got the Gus Bus. Gus Edwards, running back of the Los Angeles Chargers, currently coming off the board at pick 116. Now, I get that Gus Edwards isn't the most prolific running back in the National Football League, but Gus Edwards is on a team under Harbaugh that is going to want to run the rock gently down the stream. Doesn't matter that you have Justin Herbert, the pervert back there, who's an excellent quarterback. Their MO is going to be running the football. It's just the Harbaugh special. Both the brothers love to run the rock. Gus Edwards, former Baltimore Raven with the other Harbaugh, going from one Harbaugh to another. We also know that Greg Roman, who was the former Ravens offensive coordinator and assistant head coach, loves Gus Edwards, and he is now the Chargers offensive coordinator. Gus Edwards scored 13 fucking touchdowns last season. Gus Edwards is a behemoth on the goal line. He is a wrecking ball. He was able to get 198 carries, 810 rushing yards, and 13 total touchdowns last year. He's not going to catch very many passes. We all know that. He averaged 0.8 targets per game last season. He averaged the second most defenders in the box, and the second in terms of stacked front carry percentage. I believe in LA, while the team isn't going to be the best, they're going to want to churn the rock, run the ball at a very high rate, and I think because of that, Gus Edwards will be successful, and his competition, J.K. Dobbins, I mean, that guy just gets injured fucking tweeting out something, his finger's broken. Isaiah Spiller stinks to high heaven, and Kamani Vidal, a bit unknown. I think Gus Edwards is able to be the running back one, and on a team that runs the ball so much, I think that is definitely an ideal pick late. If you're loading up on the wide receiver position early, Gus Edwards is certainly a guy that could end up being a reliable running back two weekly. At number 5, we got Courtland Sutton of the Denver Broncos, pick 117. Now, Courtland Sutton has yet to join with the team in OTAs, but while Sutton wants that contract, and he has skipped everything up until this point, he did say that I will be there for training camp. It's been killing me that I haven't been there at OTA. So while he's looking for the contract, he's going to be a team player and show up. If you look at the Denver Broncos wide receiver core, it is crystal clear, 20/20 vision clear, the role of Courtland Sutton. Josh Reynolds, Arvin Mimsy, Tim Patrick, another guy that just gets hurt, lacing his shoes up, and Troy Franklin. Now, I'm kind of on the Troy Franklin bandwagon, but at the end of the day, I definitely like Courtland Sutton more. Courtland Sutton scored 10 touchdowns, 5th at wide receiver last season, despite the fact that Russell Wilson, Mr. Unlimited, was not very good last year in Denver. And despite the fact that the quarterback play wasn't the best, Courtland Sutton is so good that the quarterback rating per target was 9th, and he was 13th in fantasy points per target. I think with more reliable quarterback play potentially out of Bo Nix, Courtland Sutton could be a guy that ends up as a solid flex option game in and game out, and especially in more positive matchups. I am far from a Bo Nix truther. I am far from someone that's going to sit here and bang the drum aggressively for Bo Nix, but I do think Bo Nix is competent enough to feed the rock to a wide receiver that is as solid as Courtland Sutton has been in his career. At number 6, we got Blake Corum, running back of the Los Angeles Rams, coming off the board at pick 120. If you guys have enjoyed thus far, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below. If you're new, whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. So last year, Blake Corum at Michigan, 22 years old as a senior, plays in 14 games with Mr. Harbaugh, 237 carries for 1,111 yards, 16 receptions for 117 receiving yards, and 26 total touchdowns, marking back-to-back Michael Jordan 96-97 years with 1,100 plus yards rushing and 19 plus touchdowns. Do I think that Blake Corum is going to put Kyren Williams in a sleeper hold and take over as the lead back on the team, assuming Kyren is healthy? The answer to that would be fuck no, baby. But I think that Kyren Williams' insane usage from last season, what was really boosting him up was the amount of touches he was seeing game in and game out. Those touches are going to be tapered back. Now, I'm not saying that Kyren Williams is going to fade into irrelevancy. That is more than likely not going to happen. But Blake Corum will be more involved than the other backs behind Kyren Williams last year, mainly because Blake Corum is a gazillion times better than the guys that were playing behind Kyren Williams last season. Now, Kyren Williams right now is out of OTAs with a foot issue. Now, Sean McVay, who is actually someone that's pretty trustworthy in terms of coach speak, when he says something about an injury, more than likely, he's not bullshitting us, right? He says Kyren is good. He had a little foot issue that we're going to be smart with him. It'll be okay. He'll be ready by training camp in late July, right? Sounds good, right? Again, according to coach speak, McVay is 90% reliable when it comes to injury. They think that Kyren will be fine. And you know what? I don't necessarily think that Sean McVay is fibbing to us. I don't think his nose is growing like Pinocchio. But what I will tell you is that Kyren is a running back with a history of injuries. And this isn't just like, oh, he stubbed his toe last season. No, this is he broke his foot in practice in 2022 and then suffered a high ankle sprain in his NFL debut that same season. Last year, he suffered a high ankle sprain mid-season, and then he hurt his hand in the NFC wildcard game, which required surgery. So he had surgery on his hand, and now his foot is doing him dirty. Again, I am as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins, but that feels like a guy that is injury prone. Okay? Again, I'm not going to claim to have a fucking doctorate. I'm not Johnny Sins. I'm not Dr. whatever. I'm not Dr. Notorious Fantasy. But what I will tell you is I am concerned about Kyren Williams' injury history, and I think that alone should be making you want to draft Blake Corum more, because Blake Corum in a Rams offense that should be pretty solid yet again, the value is going to be there, especially when they want to run the rock on the goal line, and Blake Corum might mess around and take some of those goal line touches from Kyren and make Blake Corum solid on his own. Now, are you going to really want to start him when Kyren Williams is playing? Probably not. But if something was to happen to Kyren Williams, you have reason to believe that Blake Corum could take over and be the bell cow back. At number 7, we got Kendre Miller, running back of the New Orleans Saints, currently coming off the board at pick 146. Now, I am seeing every single person that talks about fantasy football is essentially giving Kendre Miller a reach around right now. They're hitting Kendre Miller with the Gawk Gawk 9000 special, and frankly, it is kind of warranted, right? Kendre Miller, while he was held back last season, only played in 8 games. They had Jamal Williams. They had some other running backs they're giving touches to. And obviously, Alvin Kamara was pretty solid last season, downright amazing in terms of catching passes. But Alvin Kamara is now 1 year older. And maybe this team in Kendre Miller's second year looks to push him up a little bit more, give him some more touches, and wane back Alvin Kamara slightly. Now, I'm not saying that I think that Kendre Miller is going to take over for Alvin Kamara, because frankly, I think a lot of people are being stupid when it comes to Alvin Kamara, and they need to like him more, strictly because Derek Carr is a check down merchant. But we have seen Kendre Miller, when he was given the opportunity, be quite successful. The only game where he actually saw serious work was in Week 18 up against the hot Atlanta Falcons. In that game, he had 13 carries with 1 reception on 1 target for 79 all-purpose yards and a touchdown. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Kendre Miller is the second coming of Alvin Kamara, but what I will tell you is that if Alvin Kamara goes down with how much Derek Carr loves to check the ball down, you better believe that Kendre Miller could be very successful if that was to happen. Again, knock on wood, we ain't rooting for injuries here. I have been banging the drum for Alvin Kamara while it seems like a lot of people are taking a nap, snoozing on him. Shout out Snorlax. I still feel pretty confident that Kendre Miller is worth a late round stash. At number 8, we got Jaleel McLaughlin, running back of the Denver Broncos, currently coming off the board at pick 174. Now, last season, Jaleel McLaughlin was the running back 46 in PPR and 55 in PPR points per game, but he only played in 17 games with 3 starts. He also ripped off 2 17-plus point performances in PPR in weeks 4 and 5 up against the Bears and the New York Jumbo Jets. Week 4 up against the Chi-Town Bears, he had 7 carries for 79 yards, as well as 3 receptions on 3 targets for 32 yards and 1 total touchdown. In week 5 up against the Jets, he had 9 carries for 68 yards, 1 yard short of being very nice, I like, with 69. He also had 3 receptions on 4 targets for 21 yards and a touchdown. We have seen Sean McVay talk about this offseason that they believe that this could be a battle for the lead back on this team. Just because a couple of years ago, everyone was doing somersaults to hop on the Johnson of Javonte Williams doesn't mean that he is guaranteed to be the running back 1 in week 1. Now, I would tell you right now, I think more than likely he will be the guy, right? He has the draft capital. He looked really good in college, but Jaleel McLaughlin has been getting some hype from head coach Sean Payton. Sean Payton said a couple of days ago, he is here at 5:15 a.m., even in the offseason. First one here, running in the weight room, and by the time he's at breakfast and most people are arriving, he's put in a good hour and a half of work. It's just the way he's wired, and it's impressive. This is a real lunch pail guy. First guy in, last guy out. And if Sean McVay is Sean Payton, I just said Sean McVay. Shout out to Sean McVay, though. If Sean Payton is saying this, head coach of the Broncos, you have to put some weight into it. Vontae goes much earlier than this. I know they have other running backs as well, so McLaughlin isn't necessarily a surefire lock, mortal lock of the century to be the running back 2 on the team. I think he's going to be the running back 2, and I think he might even fuck around and be the running back 1. He looked better than Javonte did last year. Now, I know, Nick, Javonte was coming off of an injury, I understand, but Javonte has been pretty disappointing thus far in his career, despite how much people loved him coming out of the NFL draft. At number 9, we got DeMario time. DeMario Douglas, wide receiver of the New England Patriots, pick 187. Last year, I love DeMario Douglas. He was a guy that we talked about in the waiver wire columns every single week. Subscribe if you want some waiver wire talk throughout the season. I make so many videos every single week, but that's one of them. So DeMario Douglas was a guy that I liked, and DeMario Douglas was dealing with Mystic Mac Jones. He was dealing with Bailey Zappi, the Zappinator, and he still had a solid season. Again, nothing to write home about. Nothing where you're thinking back and you're like, damn, I'm so glad I added DeMario Douglas, but he had some solid showings. He had 78 targets, 49 receptions, 561 receiving yards in his rookie year with 0 total touchdowns. It was essentially the fucking Jacoby Myers special in New England, where he'd have these solid games, but ultimately he was never really able to get over the hump because of the fact that he just couldn't find the end zone. He was allergic to the end zone. He ranked 18th in target separation and put up all those solid numbers with the 76th highest target quality rating. Now, I am not going to be someone that really hypes up a guy like Drake May, really hypes up Jacoby Brissett. But at the end of the day, Jacoby Brissett, Drake May, whoever they end up being the quarterback 1 this season, or even if they go half Jacoby, half Drake May, it's going to be better quarterback play than what we saw last season. And the wide receiver core there in New England doesn't really jump off the page. They've got guys like Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, but those guys are rookies. They've got Kendrick Bourne and KJ Osborne. So I like DeMario Douglas's chances of being the wide receiver 1. We saw that for multiple games last season. Nothing really crystallized, though. Nothing really jumped off the page last season because of the 0 touchdowns. There were a bunch of games where you would have been excited to have DeMario Douglas on your team if he just would have found pay dirt. So this season, hopefully the touchdowns come his way, and as essentially an undrafted player in most leagues, I'm going to take a shot on that. At number 10 to close out today's video, we got Tyler Conklin. Now this year, I have been someone that has been talking a lot about drafting a tight end in the middle rounds, being someone that targets a guy like Dalton Kincaid, a guy that like Kelsey, Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, drafting maybe a tight end a little bit earlier. But if you decide to punt the tight end position, I think a perfect target would be Tyler Conklin. Now, Tyler Conklin was the tight end 17 in PPR last year and 22 in PPR points per game. He was another player that suffered from severe touchdown-itis as he scored 0 fucking touchdowns last season because of the fact that his quarterback play was piss poor. 87 targets, though, 61 receptions, 621 receiving yards. Now, in a career as a whole, Aaron Rodgers hasn't been someone that just loves tight ends, right? He's not a guy that is force-feeding the tight ends on every single team, but when he has a solid tight end, and I actually think Tyler Conklin is a solid tight end, he uses them. So I think as your late-round flyer tight end pick, you can do a lot worse than Tyler Conklin. 5.1 targets per game, 3.6 receptions per game last year, 36.5 receiving yards per game. If you want to punt the tight end position, I think Tyler Conklin could be it, especially if this Jets offense skyrockets directly through the moon, straight to Mars, so on and so forth. I really do think Tyler Conklin, even in his older age, is still solid, and he's been really consistent over the last couple of years in terms of targets. It's just kind of the touchdowns that have done him dirty. So thank you guys all so much for watching today's video. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below, like it owes you money while you're down there. Whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. Love you guys all so much. Hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. Hope you have a great Friday if you're watching it the day it comes out. Love you guys. As always, have a great one. Good boy.